When talking about rock and roll, the first thing that comes to mind is always the famous rock stars from the West, such as the Beatles, Elvis Presley, or the Rolling Stones. But you know that China also had a golden age of rock and roll? Many amazing rock bands emerged at the time, and their legacy keeps influencing the young generation in China till today. This video is gonna give you a glimpse into the world of Chinese rock and its ebb and flow. Rock music was originally born in the African American community, which was a music genre that emerged under the influence of blues, jazz, and gospel. But later in the mid-19th century, rock music was marketed by the American mainstream as a white culture. It became extremely prevalent because the capitalist music industry was intentionally marketing it to the dominant white audiences after discovering how popular rock music was among young white people. In Black Sound, Black Body, Steve Waxman writes, "White rock fed like a vampire upon African American musical forms. By whitewashing rock music, the music genre quickly dominates the Western market and further extending its influence to the other side of the earth." Since the economic reform in 1978, Chinese people have gained access to a wide range of Western cultures. The first rock band in Chinese history was initiated in 1979 by 4 university students in Beijing. They were influenced by Western musicians such as the Beatles, the Bee Gees, and Paul Simon, and their musical activities at the time were mostly covering the songs of Western musicians. However, their existence as a rock band was nearly invisible to the mainstream society, and they were not able to continue their music career because they were only students at the time. But most importantly, according to a research conducted by Wang, during the 1970s, the government-owned music industry's focus was producing praise songs to socialist idealism, so there was hardly any room for rock bands in the mainstream culture. But during the mid-1980s, doors were blown by 西北风, the northwest wind, inspired by Shanxi folk songs. Shanxi folk songs always sound rough and powerful, which originated from the northwest of China, where the Yellow River Basin is located, long revered by Chinese people as the cradle of Han civilization. Popular songs inspired by the style of Shanxi folk songs became increasingly welcomed in China at the time. So, under both the influence of Western rock music and Shanxi folk songs, the unique Chinese rock and roll eventually became a young generation's culture after the mid-80s. Cui Jian is labeled as the godfather of Chinese rock music, who became the first rock star in China. In 1986, he performed in Beijing Workers' Stadium during a large concert held for the International Year of Peace. The song "Nothing to My Name" was astonishing and unprecedented. It sounded like nothing the Chinese people have heard before. All the spectators were mesmerized by Cui Jian's unique voice and the power of his music. From this moment, the first Chinese rock star was officially born. In an article from the Washington Post, Max Fisher wrote, when explaining the success of Nothing to My Name, Cui Jian said, "Back then, people were used to hearing the old revolutionary songs and nothing else. So when they heard me singing about what I wanted as an individual, they picked up on it. When they sang the song, it was as if they were expressing what they felt." Cui Jian's success was a catalyst for the rise of Chinese rock. He influenced many young Chinese who wanted to criticize society using rock music as a tool to express their thoughts, passion, and desire. Many rock bands bloomed after Cui Jian's success. It was the golden age of Chinese rock and roll. Rock bands such as Black Panther, Tang Dynasty, and the all-female rock band Cobra were very popular during the time. The government was not sure what to do with this new culture, so the rock bands were sometimes accepted and sometimes rejected. Despite the government's ambiguous attitude and the pressure from the conservatives in the society, the rock bands kept striving and producing high-quality music, like how Dou Wei sings in his song "Leave Me Alone." However, the downfall of Chinese rock and roll was sooner than expected. In the 90s, rock music was considered a part of the hooligan culture in China, which is a young generation's culture that advocates for anti-authority and rebellion, just like how Stephen King described in his book about the history of reggae. Rocksteady represented a leap forward in the development of popular music as a means of social protest in Jamaica. The equivalent in China would be rock music. It was a means of expressing discontent in an unstable society which was undergoing drastic changes. However, according to Iran Decloud's article on Chinese popular music, under the forces of commercialization that swept over China after Deng Xiaoping's visit to the Southern Special Economic Zones in the summer of 1992, both the hooligan culture and rock music's appeal declined steadily, and with them the hooligan generation faded away as well. Being marginal was no longer considered a desirable option. Plugging into the ocean, a popular metaphor for engaging in private business and linking up with the trucks of the world, became more popular lifestyle choices. That was also the time when the culture industry started to take over. The term culture industry first appeared in the book co-authored by Adorno and Horkheimer. The book analyzes the culture industry in America, arguing how the homogeneous cultural products mass-produced by the entertainment industry has paralyzed people's minds. It was basically the same situation in China after the open door policy was established. The entertainment industry took over the market. Numerous TV shows, pop music, and films were produced during the late 90s and 2000s. Chinese people started to make more money, owning private businesses, and the economy was developing at a rapid speed. No one needed rock music's spirit of rebellion anymore. The entertainment industry of mass production was more compatible with the romanticism Chinese people were yearning for. There was less and less critical opinions about society because everyone was busy making R&B. Rock and roll had thus lost favor with Chinese people. Nevertheless, in the late 2000s, the culture industry and marketization surprisingly became a stepping stone for the rock revival in China. The rock revival in China started with the emergence of MIDI Music Festival. In Iran Wang Lao's article on how Chinese rock became state-sponsored, he indicates that in the PRC, yearly music festivals started in earnest with the MIDI Music Festival in 2000. The festival is organized by the privately owned Beijing MIDI School of Music, established in 1993. The school catalyzed the influx of so-called out-of-towner musicians into Beijing. During the first 2 years, the festivals were reunion parties of these musicians in the school's auditorium. This music festival later became the Woodstock of China. In 2000, the outline for the 10th five-year plan first enshrined the term cultural industries in the central policy, thereby depoliticized culture and mitigated the stigma of rock music. Local governments started to collaborate with popular MIDI music festival in order to boost media exposure and local GDP. They want to use the rock music festival as name cards for the cities. In Wang Lao's article, he claims that the government of Zhenjiang County invested 1 million RMB on the 2009 MIDI Music Festival, and the next year, MIDI even worked with a 5 million RMB budget. In the past decade, Chinese rock music seems to have found a middle ground as a space for negotiation with the government. There is even a phenomenal music variety show called The Big Band in recent years, which features many nostalgic Chinese rock songs, at the same time offering a stage for young rock musicians in the new century to show their talents and passion for rock music. Just like how Neil Young sings in My My Hey Hey, rock and roll can never die.